Alright, we're going to do a little chemistry here, talk a little bit about oxidation reduction reactions, talking about photosynthesis. So you can kind of get your notes out, open up, get ready to roll, and let's get ready to rock.
Alright, hope you like that intro, and let's get going here. So basically when we're going through this reaction down here on the bottom is going to be the one that you kind of need to follow along with or pay attention to as we go through. So just kind of pay attention to this, and like I said, we're going to kind of follow or try to trace the different molecules as they go through the reaction. So once again, we talk a lot about this concept of this being a oxidation reduction reaction. And so I told you in class to remember kind of the expression oil rig. Okay? And what oil rig stands for is oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. So what does that mean? What is being lost? It refers to the loss or gaining of electrons. So in the case of oxidation, oxidation is going to be a loss of electrons, whereas reduction reaction is going to be a gain of electrons. Okay, so kind of remember that as you go through. Oxidation is lost, and reduction is gain, and we're talking about electrons here. Okay, so when we compare this diagram here of your reactants to our products, notice it's actually the splitting of water that's going to go on here. And so what ends up happening is, notice that the carbon dioxide here, as it converts to water, is actually being reduced. Okay, carbon dioxide, the oxygen here is being reduced, whereas the O2 is being oxidized. Okay, is being oxidized down to this oxygen here, so that splitting process. So when you look at this, looking at the reaction, the CO2 becomes reduced, the water becomes oxidized. Okay? So water is oxidized, carbon dioxide is going to be reduced in this process. This whole entire process is endergonic. Endergonic means the taking in of energy, and it requires light energy to be captured by the chlorophyll molecule. And it actually excites that electron, shoots it up an energy level. And as it falls back down to Earth, falls back down to its normal energy level, that light energy is then converted into a chemical energy in the form of potential energy. Okay? And it stores that in the bonds of the sugar molecule itself. There are two different reactions to this. The light reaction, okay, and that's the one that actually requires the energy. And then the Calvin cycle. That's the actual synthesis part. So when you talk about photo the light, synthesis is the Calvin. Calvin's also known as the dark reaction. I talked about that. I don't really like that term. Light independence is a little bit better way to say it. The light reaction, it's going to actually happen in the thylakoid, and it requires a splitting of water. So a couple things to notice right off the bat. Location in the thylakoid of the light reaction. Notice we need water from that first reaction that we had, and it releases oxygen. So that's how you could actually prove that the reaction's occurring. If we did a lab to test photosynthesis, the production of oxygen will tell us that the light reaction is occurring. And notice we make ATP and NADPH. Back to this reaction that we have, notice what we've done so far. We have split water in the light reaction. We have not talked anything about the carbon dioxide yet. So we did split the water, and we have produced the oxygen. But once again, so far in the reaction itself, no mention of carbon dioxide, no mention of the end products. What have we made? ATP and NADPH. Those are like electron carriers. Those are energy carriers that are going to be used here in a little bit. Okay. The next part of the reaction is the Calvin cycle. It happens in a different location. Its job is to actually take the energy that's produced from the light reaction in the form of ATP and NADPH, along with the input of carbon dioxide, okay, to generate sugar. Okay, so it's going to actually make the precursors to that glucose molecule. So if you go back to this reaction, if I can make it a little bit bigger, there we go. Now all of a sudden we have officially mentioned the Calvin cycle is going to take this along with the energy that was produced by splitting the water to generate our sugar molecule. Okay, so that's the two parts of the reaction. As we can see, this is kind of a stepwise process of just what I described and the location. The light reaction is going to happen in the thylakoid. Okay, it's going to require light. It's going to split the water molecule. As a result, we're going to produce ATP and NADPH, which are going to be electron carriers, going to be our energy source. We're also going to produce oxygen in the process. The products here, oxygen is a waste product, going to get expelled. The products here are going to, with carbon dioxide, in the Calvin cycle to generate the sugar molecule that we actually produce. We can then recycle the NADP and the NADP into light reaction. It can be regenerated ATP and works. The fact that the Calvin cycle is a cycle means that what you start with is what you're going to end with, and it's a continual process. And once again, we'll look at these more kind of in the future about how this actually works and how we go about producing sugar, producing the ATP, all that stuff. So this is just a very broad introduction into photosynthesis. Okay, so how does it do this? How is it able to convert that energy? It uses the chloroplasts, and the chloroplasts are specialized organelles that act as factories, and they're able to convert that light energy into chemical energy in the form of ATP. Your book talks about ATP, and I do want to give ATP a little bit of credit to explain how and why ATP works. It has to do with the bonds, specifically the energy in the bonds. And let me show you an ATP molecule real quick to kind of explain this. So here we have an ATP molecule, and once again, we'll look more about this in actually cellular respiration, but a couple things that you need to know. Basically, if you look at this molecule, because of this third group, it causes kind of an unbalanced. So it's this third phosphate. What it does is it makes the whole molecule itself kind of unstable. Okay, and what happens when it's unstable, it's kind of linking on there. You need more energy to kind of hold it in. So it's the releasing of this last phosphate group here. That's where the energy is. And that's why ATP3 has a lot more potential energy than ADP and AMP. Okay, so that's what we're going to kind of look at here. So ATP, that's going to be our energy source, and it's because of that third bond that we're going to generate using light energy. So how does light do that? Well, to understand that, you got to understand a little bit about light. Okay, so light's in a form of electromagnetic energy, and it's also known as radiation. And so there's a lot of different types of electromagnetic radiation. All right, when you think of that, you can think of like UV light, X-rays, gamma rays, infrared, microwave, visual light, radio. Those are all forms of different types of radio waves as they exist. And there's another, when you look at a wavelength, you're going to talk about its wavelength is the distance between two crests. You can kind of see it down here. The different wavelengths correspond to different types of magnetic energy that is present. And so there's also a corollary between wavelengths and frequency. There's an inverse relationship in between those two. So the larger the wavelength, the shorter the frequency. The larger the frequency, the lower the wavelength actually is, the distance. Gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, those are all high frequency, high energy waves. Then you have your visual light, your infrared, micro, radio waves. Those are very low frequency and very high wavelength types of energy sources. Visible light is just a small portion of the electromagnetic energy source, and there's a lot other types. And a lot of times, you can commonly associate those with, like I said, the X-rays, gamma rays, cosmic rays. Those are all different rays that are part of the process. Couple things just to remember about this. As your frequency increases, okay, your wavelength decreases. As your frequency increases, so does your photon energy increase as well. Okay, so therefore, like gamma and cosmic rays have the highest level of energy. Your ultraviolet and your purples and blues have a higher energy level than, let's say, your reds on the visual spectrum. Here you can kind of see this here. So notice, I would just take note of this is basically what I talked about in the last, where your higher energy is located. Your higher energy is going to be located in your purple area here, whereas your lower energy is in the reds. Lower energy, once again, your higher energy as well. Just understand the differences between the frequency and wavelength, the relationship between the two, and wavelength and energy. So nice slide to kind of memorize or look at. So chlorophyll is going to be a pigment, and this is a specialized pigment that is able to absorb the energy from the sun. It's going to reflect the color green. It's going to absorb different wavelengths as well. We're going to look at exactly what wavelengths it does. The reason why greens actually appear green, why leaves appear green, it's due to this chlorophyll reflecting green light while absorbing other colors. And so, this diagram kind of shows it. Remember, we're talking about the light reaction that happens on the thylakoid here. Light in the form of all wavelengths of light is going to hit, but the actual reflected light is going to be your green light. That's why it looks green. We're absorbing in this red and the blue range of the energy source. The blue being a little bit higher energy, red being a little bit lower. There are other pigments as well here, and there are multiple chlorophylls. We're going to focus on only two types of chlorophyll, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Where these peaks are located, this is important. The peak here is telling you where the actual color of absorption is occurring. So for chlorophyll A, you can identify it versus chlorophyll B. We got a peak right about 420, another peak here in the 680 range. We also have the chlorophyll B, okay, absorbing here and here, and then the carotenoids we'll talk about as well. Those are chlorophyll B and carotenoids. Those are what we call accessory pigments, okay, that help chlorophyll do their job. We'll talk about how that occurs more. There's a couple of videos I'd like to show you. Once again, kind of a better illustration or demonstration, and we'll do that in next class. Just another diagram here, the visual light spectrum, along with where the absorption peaks are for chlorophyll. I do want you to maybe look at this versus the last slide and try to figure out what we're talking about, whether it's chlorophyll A or B. A is the main pigment of chlorophyll. It has a more of a blue-green color, and it's the only of the pigments that actually directly reacts with the light to do the light reaction. Chlorophyll B and the carotenoids are accessory pigments, and they're going to assist in this process, kind of funnel energy to chlorophyll A, but they are not going to directly partake in this. And these accessory pigments do a couple things. They funnel, and they also help absorb some of the light energy. Too much light energy can actually burn out the chlorophyll itself, so it can damage the chlorophyll. So once again, it's almost like putting SPF on or some type of sunscreen to help protect the chlorophyll A. But that's the most important. If I asked you what the most important pigment is, chlorophyll A. This is the actual molecule here. Notice in A and B there's a slight difference, not much. It's just either get this methyl group up here, or you have the oxygen. There's our magnesium located right there, and then you have the hydrocarbon tail down here. But this is the entire molecule. Sunlight hits this, excites an electron. That excited electron, as it falls back down to Earth, will be what actually will capture and then eventually create ATP and NADPH. So it goes up in energy level. It's unstable. As it falls back down, this photon is given, causes an actual glow of the chlorophyll, and we can actually observe this. If you just take pure chlorophyll in a glass, put in light, shut the lights off, and it will actually glow, and the glass will actually warm. The temperature will change as well. And that's what it kind of looks like. And so it's this process here, the exciting of the molecule, and then the going back down to its ground state that gives us the energy that we have available to basically produce sugars. That's basically what I want to cover for class today. Next class, now that we have a little bit of understanding of chlorophyll and basically a broad understanding of this, what we're going to do is we're going to then look at specifically how does the photosystem work? How do we take energy and harvest it? And so we're going to look at these things called photosystems, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, and go through how they actually work. So that'll be next time. Okay, so hope you had a good day. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in class.